Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest edition of the Kolpack and Izzo podcast, brought to you by Gate City Bank with Jeff Kolpack. I'm Dom Izzo. North Dakota State ready for game number 2 of the 2022 season, and another first-time opponent coming to the Dome, North Carolina Agricultural and Technical College out of Greensboro, North Carolina. The Aggies out of the Big South Conference set to make their debut tomorrow afternoon at Gate City Bank Field at the Fargodome. Jeffrey, we talked about this earlier in the week. This is a proud football program that has had some big-time wins, and I'm excited. Anytime you get to see somebody new at the Dome, I always get a little more juice for it. But this is a team that you look back at its history, they've had, A, some really good players, and B, some really big wins.
Yeah, FBS wins, too.
Yes.
And so you can't really underestimate that, but I'm just curious what kind of a level of play they have this year, because I just can't get over North Carolina Central of the MEAC, which isn't a very good program. They're not. I mean, they're not a very good team generally, and handled the Aggies last week in the game in that Duke put on in Charlotte. So I just don't get how you're going into the CA next year, and your level of play is a little questionable right now.
Yeah, and I was visiting with Sam Washington, the head coach, about that earlier this week, and he said, 2 years ago when this, or 3 years ago when this game was scheduled, we were in a good spot. We just won the Celebration Bowl. He thought, we would probably be maybe more competitive than perhaps what we'll see tomorrow, because I remember that, Jeff, when they played in Atlanta in, December of 2019, they were humming. They had a team that won 11, 12 football games. All right, let's see how they would match up. And unfortunately, that game never happened, but it's going to happen now here on Saturday.
The one team I think would have been cool to see and to come up here would have been Jackson State with Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, his son, who looks like a pretty good quarterback, the number one recruit last year in the country. That would have been a fun, kind of hyped up game, just having that kind of an atmosphere with Coach Prime, so to speak. North Carolina A&T, enjoy the game, people. I just enjoy the day. Sounds like it's going to be a pretty nice day. Go tailgate, go enjoy the atmosphere. It may not be the greatest game. I don't know. I mean, if NDSU mails it in, I thought they kind of mailed it in last week. It was just sort of and it's hard to say that when you score 56, and to say it was a pretty average performance, it sounds a little strange, but I didn't think they were particularly, the Bison I'm talking about now, really overly engaged in that game.
I'll get to that in a second. I was just looking here throughout the other HBCUs that they have played. NDSU, Morgan State, we've seen up here. Mississippi Valley State, you've gone to Itabena, which granted, when Sam Washington was an alum of that school, he was there at the same time playing cornerback against Jerry Rice. I mean, that alone is just a cool story. The Bison beat Grambling for their first ever national championship in the 60s. Delaware State, we've seen here. They've come out and played the Bison. Prairie View was here in 2012. Now A&T. The Bison look like they're going to play Tennessee State. That's Eddie George's school right now. And that's so far of the HBCUs that play football. Have they played Pine Bluff? I don't know that. Do you know that? Okay, they've not played Pine Bluff
we've just been to Pine Bluff for basketball.
Yes, but those are the schools that I always think these are intriguing, Jeff. I like when with the FCS the way it is right now. These are the kind of games, at least I think, for maybe the hardcore fans, to get them a new experience for football, to see a different program like this.
But I've covered every one of those. Well, I didn't cover the Pecan Bowl in the 60s, but I've covered all those in the Division I area that you mentioned, and they really haven't been competitive.
Nope.
I mean, NDSU has just overwhelmed them with strength and speed and just better players. And I go, even the trip to Itabena, I mean, that was over quickly.
Yep.
I mean, Tyler Rowe was a running back.
Yep.
And they couldn't stop him. I mean, they literally could not stop Tyler Rowe. They couldn't tackle him.
And that's what Sam Washington told me. He's like, we have no answer for their size. Like, what do you feed the guys up there? Which Jim Kramer has only the answers on that. But to your point on this, before we move on to the Bison side of things, that they're moving to the Colonial. They want to be a national contender that's considered for the FCS playoffs. And games like this, whether they're going to take some lumps tomorrow or not, are going to help them eventually when they make that transition next year to the CAA.
I wanted to hook up with their athletic director this week, and through a series of emails, it just didn't happen. But I wanted to ask, how much are you investing in football?
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to get your level of program to say what Delaware is right now, or to some of those more established CAA teams? Yep. What are the steps you're going to take? Because obviously, and we know this, I mean, you just drive by university, you see it. Football is an investment. You got to have money to be good. You just do. You cannot go on the cheap in Division I football. I don't care if it's FCS, nope. FBS. You cannot run a program on the cheap. And so I'm just curious on A&T going to the CAA, moving up to all, the scholarship commitment,
yep,
facilities commitment. What do you plan? What's the plan here? And again, I tried hard to connect with the AD, and it just didn't happen. And so I don't know those answers, but I'm a little suspect right now after watching the score last week.
And I'll throw this out at you now with how the CAA's changed with James Madison moving on. Hampton's in the league now. Monmouth is in the league. They could compete with them. Campbell's coming in. Those are schools I think A&T now could compete and beat. But the ones you're talking about, like a Delaware, New Hampshire had a great run for a while. They've dropped off a little bit. Villanova is there. We saw Towson up close. I think the machine is there for Towson if they invest maybe a little bit more in it, that they can be good. So maybe it won't be as much for A&T to be in the top half. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the CAA has been the big drop off in the last 10 years. That's been the story of the FCS. Yep. The defections and just general way that things have gone there with how they've lost some marquee teams and not really replaced them. So yeah, there's no doubt this program could be in the upper half. I'm not saying that, but I just don't see it being right now. And unless they invest, I don't see it being a playoff competitive team.
You would have probably won a lot of money if you would have bet that the Drake Bulldogs would have gone down and scored on their opening possession of the game. I don't know if anybody had that one, Kolpack, but that was kind of indicative of what you were talking about earlier about how NDSU played last week, which was, it seemed to me, kind of asleep at the wheel.
Well, yeah, they just came out and it was it was almost alarming a little bit, wasn't it? The way this offense, this Drake offense, was almost historically bad last year. And, they brought a lot of the guys back, but they were just bad and finished 120th out of 122 in scoring offense. I mean, that's just oof. And then they came out like they were fourth in scoring offense last year. It just was amazing to me. And that to me was and I think the coaching staff knows that and Ant said that after the game. He goes, I got to change maybe something or how I address this team before the game. So we'll see what the difference is this week.
You think I know he's taking the shots there for his team, but that's on the guys though. No, it's the season opener. You mentioned this on our post-game show. If you're not jazzed for that, then I don't know what you're going to get up for. No.
Yeah. Well, yeah, right. Season opener, and the students,
the banner going up, the whole thing. To me, that's the first one, but I don't know. Maybe they'll have the Craig Bowl harder edge for North Carolina A&T on Saturday. They better. I think A&T is a better team, so they best not mess around early on. You give a team a little bit of mojo, and then you've got yourself a football game.
To me, Don, this game is all about setting yourself up for next week.
Yep.
I think they got to raise their level of play because Arizona is a much, much improved team. They had the Pac-12 offensive and defensive players of the week in the opener against San Diego State. Quarterback's good. They got some dynamic receivers now through the portal. This is not the Arizona of one win a year ago. It is not. It's not even close. So to me, I think you need to raise your level of play against A&T and maybe you're play a little faster, a little harder, a little stronger, because next week it gets real.
This may have got glossed over, Kolpack. You can give us a little more in-depth on offense and how I wasn't even that impressed with offensively of how they played on Saturday. I mean, you saw so many different guys get in the game and touch the ball and carry the ball, but there wasn't anything from the passing game, I know they only threw it, 9 times that Cam Miller threw it. There wasn't still anything there that really blew me away on Saturday.
I don't think they really threw much of a playbook at him either.
Yep.
You know, it was pretty routine plays. Cam Miller 6 of 9, pretty West Coast offensive kind of a performance. And I think the second half when they had 3 straight 3-and-outs is kind of on your mind too, right?
Yep.
And
it is to me.
Yeah, that was not a something you want to see going into Arizona. But then you had backups. You had Cole Payton at quarterback, and you had a lot of backups in the game. So you take that for what it's worth. Hunter Lipke was absolutely tremendous on that touchdown run.
Yeah. Well, that's the Lipke that people are going to have. Right. That's the Lipke that people are going to have to look out for. Zach Mathis did find the end zone for the first time, which for people that were looking for that, there's your answer there. But, in a game this week, I'm looking for a Phoenix Sproles, Braylon Henderson, one of those guys to come out, have a few catches, and kind of stat, because that's still a question, at least to me, at the wide receiver spot.
Get hot, right?
Yeah.
It's like a golfer. Have somebody get hot, get 2-3 receptions in a row. Gindorf was the most targeted receiver last week, and he was the guy getting open.
And that's fine. I mean, he's a load too. We should not overlook that. But
no,
you need somebody to get down the field and make a play. I don't know who can do that still.
Good question. A little silence there, right?
Yeah.
That's the show us who's it going to be.
Am I making too much out of the missed field goal from Will Cardinal?
Yes. I don't think he's going to be the field goal guy from that distance. I think it's Crosa.
That's Crosa there? Okay.
Yeah.
Is it still an issue going forward, though?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think from 35 yards in, I don't think it's going to be an issue. But if you need somebody to win a game at a 47-yard field goal, a little suspect right now.
Yeah, that's like maybe next week. You know what I mean? Like there's going to have to be a kick on outside in a tough environment to maybe win the game or swing the game. That's where this could come into effect. It might not be this first 2 games, but it might be next week.
Yeah, 3 points is not a big deal against North Carolina A&T and Drake. Could be huge against Arizona. Huge. Maybe toward the end of a half, something like that. You're able to generate a little, 30, 40-yard drive to get in field goal range on the last play of the first half, and your 45-yard field goal, which Jake Reynolds was pretty good at. Now I'm not really sure.
I remember you writing about this years ago about how special teams was not necessarily the Achilles heel of the Bison, but not necessarily a great spot. And I look over the last couple of years, going back to that spring season, where they have excelled there. Jaden Price with another touchdown return. They get the blocked field goal, and Destin Talbot returns it for a touchdown. That is, I know they always say special teams is for special players, but they have decided, and I know they did this years ago, mostly out of necessity because guys were going down, to put some of their best players on the field in special teams. And, man, that has paid off in spades over the last couple of years.
I think Jaden Price is tremendous.
Yes.
The way he can field the ball, have the sense of how to make the first guy miss, and then have the vision to see the crease. That's just a God-given ability that it has. Ryan Smith had that.
Yep.
Ryan Smith had that ability to do the same things. And it's just, I don't think you can coach it. I mean, you can a little bit, but you can coach the blocking scheme, but I don't think you can coach the way you have that feel for when grabbing a punt and finding the opening and knowing, where to go, what stutter step, what juke you do. That's just, he's just good at it. How many people are going to kick it to him?
After this, I don't know many. I mean, they stopped kicking it to Watson early on, and they really didn't last season. And that's, you've got Kobe Johnson, I think Raja Nelson lined up there on kick returns. I wouldn't kick to either one of those.
Well, it's like last year when they kicked it away from Christian Watson on kickoff, and then NDSU went to the I tandem on a kickoff return and split at the last second, hoping that Watson would guess right and he'd get the ball. I don't know. You're going to see a lot of angled kicks out of bounds. They'd rather take the 34-yard punt over the possibility of a 34-yard return.
Man, it's fascinating to see that pan out. I mentioned this during the broadcast on Saturday. 4 years since a defensive touchdown, which Dan Marlette was the last one, 2018, when the Bison won at Western Illinois prior to Will Mostart's scoop and score on Saturday. That seems crazy to me for a team that's that talented defensively to go that long without finding the end zone.
How many times, Dom, on this podcast have you called a defensive touchdown? You're like 0 for 15.
You know what? I probably did it more in the newspaper than I did on the podcast. I've called a defensive touchdown. Yes, but you're right.
And then you did call it against Drake. Probably one of the few times you didn't call a defensive touchdown.
Learned my lesson there. They came back to bite me.
I see a Courtney Eubanks pick six.
But just again, that goes to show you though that spring season, Jeff. You've written about it. Everybody's talked about it, the lack of takeaways that they didn't generate. That's certainly over the last 2 seasons now. It's been a huge emphasis for the Bison on defense.
Isn't it crazy that Courtney Eubanks does not have any career interception yet? And he's one of the best D-backs, corners in the Missouri Valley, if not the FCS.
They're not throwing it his way, man.
They don't throw it his way.
No.
Yeah. It's hard to get interceptions when you don't see the ball.
No doubt about that. Going back to QB, if the game again plays out like NDSU hopes it will, I have imagined we're going to see a lot more Cole Payton. I would see him roll out and throw him more. Jeff, I know it didn't present itself maybe, and I know there was a couple drops in the game last week, but that's something that I think they want to see more of, and they're going to give him that opportunity if it plays out that way this week.
This is an interesting scenario, and it's one about NDSU's been really classy and good about really dumbing down their offense when they're up big.
Yep.
Right? A lot of dive plays up the middle. Is it okay to let him throw a little bit just for development piece? Say you're up 52-0, 52-10. Is it okay, and it's early in the fourth quarter, to let him throw 3 straight times? Is it,
Yeah, I know it, because there's some that would say, no, you know what, let's run the ball 3 times and get out of here.
But they may need him.
Right?
What if Cam gets hurt? They may need him.
I totally agree with that, too. And there would probably be some that say, you know what, we need it for the development piece of this, that we got to have him throw the football. I could see both sides of that. I really can. I'm not trying to just ride the fence on that. I could see both angles, and each having validity to set arguments. Hey, you know what? You're up by $1 million. What are you doing throwing the ball? Also, hey, we're trying to figure out what we've got at our backup quarterback. I could see both angles on that. That's interesting to see.
I think as long as there's a lot of time left, I think it's fine. I do. And I'm a stickler for taking a knee. I mean, I am. I'm a stickler for calling the dogs off. But in this case, it's not your starting quarterback. It's your backup. And he's a redshirt freshman. I think it's okay to let him throw the ball.
Yeah,
I do.
And they got to see it. They frankly do. What they've got out of that guy. They know a little bit, I think, in practice, but it's different, just obviously different when the game is going. And if it plays out that way tomorrow at the Dome, then let her rip is what I say. Let's see what you got. I think that's what they got to figure out, especially for the guys he's throwing to. Because for a couple of them out there, they don't really know what they've got with Bryce Lance. I don't think they know what they got with DJ Hart yet. They got to see what they got out there, too.
And we never really saw those. We didn't see those guys get targeted at all last week.
Nope, not one bit. That's the other part of this.
And your DJ Hart is your guy. I mean, you think he's the guy.
I picked him as my guy to click for 2022. Yep, and not a great start.
Not a target.
Nope,
not a target.
Not a way to start there. Before we go our game picks here, I know you were watching, I did too last night, the Missouri State Tennessee Martin game. There's some teams that just probably give other teams fits. I don't know how good Tennessee Martin is. They know they won it, but they match up well with Missouri State. Or is Missouri State not that good?
I don't know. I was trying to figure that out myself. But Missouri State's defense certainly left a little to be desired. Yep. They left a lot of receivers open.
Their offensive line still leaves a lot to be desired too, Kolpack, in my mind.
Yeah. So to me, Missouri State looked the same as last year. I didn't see a whole lot of improvement from that team. They looked the same. And Tennessee Martin, I
like their QB. I like their QB.
Yep. And he threw to the right guy. He found the open guy.
Yep.
Which is sometimes easier said than done. Their running back was all right, but most State looked the same to me right now. I just can't,
They are 2-0 and not either game against Central Arkansas or Tennessee Martin all that impressive. They won't. And now they got to play Petrino's old team next week in Arkansas. That's going to be really interesting how that plays out. You know how all the talk is going to be before that game.
Yeah, but let's not overthink this. They do have a lot of portal guys.
Yep.
And sometimes it's hard to really mesh out the bat when you have a lot of new faces in the lineup. Or you're not in the lineup, just on the team. You know? Yeah. So we'll pump the brakes on that a little bit and see how they do in the first 2-3 games in the Valley.
So as we get into the pick'em segment here, full disclosure here, Kolpack can gloat all he wants that he picked Air Force to win over Northern Iowa, but I had the word. I didn't have the word scoring 64, though, against Southern Illinois.
Oh.
Holy cow.
What is going on with Nick Hill right now? You just don't give up 64. I don't care if it's to Alabama. I mean, 64.
That was bad.
And I watched a little bit of that game. And that's the Valley is a reputation of supposed to be the big physical team that plays pretty good defense. What?
Yeah, they got pushed around by Incarnate Word. And I'm with them that I think they're an improved team, but that was shocking to see that unfold on Saturday night.
Word lost their all-world
Yes,
quarterback.
he's quarterbacking now at Washington State. Yeah, it's just crazy. Let's do some picks here. Let's start the biggie in Missoula on Saturday. South Dakota at Montana. The Coyotes got ripped at Kansas State. Now they got to go play in Missoula.
Yeah, I think South Dakota's still got some issues on the offensive line. They particularly weren't very good against K-State. I know it's K-State, but their old line was not good. It just was not. And Montana at home, Montana's program's on the up. I like Montana by pretty comfortable margin.
I agree with you. I think they win by a couple touchdowns. I think the Grizz and Washington Grizzly are a different team, man. And South Dakota's, we talked about their schedule before the season got going. The first 5 are just brutal, and this is another one. I think Montana wins pretty easily in that game on Saturday. UC Davis and South Dakota State is a night game in Brookings. What do we make of the Jackrabbit offense that they couldn't do anything against Iowa? I know Iowa's defense is good. Do they get it going here on Saturday night?
Well, yeah, I think they get it going, but this is not an easy pushover game. Davis brings a lot of players back. They got a good staff. It's a playoff team who faltered last year, but maybe they're renewed now. They had some pretty good moments last year. I don't think this is going to be a 35-14 game by any means. This could be a tight game. And South Dakota State better be careful. They're a little banged up, too.
I agree with you.
Am I going to pick the upset? No, but I thought about it.
I know you love Dan Hawkins. They played in the playoffs last year. You mentioned SDSU won by 1 million. I think it is closer. I think it's a 7-point game. I think the Jacks win, but I think it's a fourth quarter game. I think that one's up for grabs.
Yeah, don't sleep on this one.
No. Alabama's playing Texas. In a couple of years, this is a conference game, Kolpack, so you wrap your mind around that. But does Steve Sarkisian's team have any chance to hang around with Alabama or no?
No. Alabama's too good. And what is the dollar value of the 2 head coaches in this game?
Oh, my God.
It's gotta be.
It's astronomical. It's
a couple $100 million. I don't know.
Oh, God.
Total contracts, total earnings.
Sarkisian's getting well compensated at Texas, and Saban we know what his deal is at.
How about Dabo Sweeney's new deal?
Yeah, Dabo's got a good one too at Clemson. That's Kirby Smart's now sitting there as the national champion head coach, and I've just got left in the dust. Yeah, I got left in the dust by those guys. Yeah, I think Alabama probably wins pretty comfortably there. 2 last ones here before we go. SEMO at SIU. No, now 2 weeks ago you asked me, I would say this is a blowout.
No
SIU
chance.
wins, but do we rethink that now?
Well, I'm going to give SIU one more chance of redemption here as a program. I mean that's a program changer, Daniel, to give up 64 to the Word. I got to believe if Nick Hill didn't have his team's attention going into that last week, he's got it now.
Yep.
So I will give them one more chance.
I'm with you. They should win by double digits. SEMO's not good. And if this game is closer than that, then I'm with you. There's some red flags, major ones, hanging around with Southern Illinois. Finally, I think it's the best game of the weekend in the FCS, and it's in Grand Forks. Northern Iowa at UND. Vegas has UND -1.5, so almost a pick 'em for this game on Saturday. Each team off a loss, but both different ways off a loss. Northern Iowa, I mentioned, gave up almost 600 yards to Air Force. And UND, I thought, hung in for the most part until the fourth quarter against Nebraska.
Right. A week ago, I would have said this is a Northern Iowa game, but I've flipped. I think UND is going to win this game. I thought their offensive line was pretty good against Nebraska, and I thought they hung in that just to hang in that environment was, I think, a pretty good confidence builder for this team. Northern Iowa historically has been really good on defense, especially in these FBS games.
Yep.
And that's almost similar to an SIU head scratcher. Like, what in Mark Farley's going on down there to give that up to Air Force?
UND is good at home. They're just a better football team for whatever reason they are at the Alerus Center. I was with you, Kolpack, preseason. I thought Northern Iowa would win this game. I'm flipped too. I'm on UND to win this game. They're just different at home. And the way the Valley has shook out, I know it's 1 week, but UND could very well find themselves at the end of September at 3-1. And with how teams are playing, maybe they're a playoff team this year. I didn't have that happening.
Yeah, and I was impressed by Isaiah Smith, right?
Yes.
The running back.
Yep.
He was really good. And I think if Air Force ran through UNI, Isaiah Smith can do the same.
And I'm with you. The offensive line of UND was better than I thought. They had 3 new guys up there, including Moorhead Seth Anderson, former Bison, that he's going to start this week. Their O-line was better than what I thought. And that's why I'm going to – let's see how they go. No, you remember the James Ruffin story. UNI always has some dudes on the defensive line. Will they show up this week?
We'll see.
Yeah.
That's a huge early game.
Yep.
Huge.
Conference game in week 2 is always interesting. The Bison had that way back when with Northern Iowa. They lost that game down in Cedar Falls. Great stuff as always, bud. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow for a busy Bison game day.
Tomorrow. See you bright and early.
So there you have it, folks. Don't forget, Bison Game Day gets us going 10 a.m. on WDAY. Kolpack will be joined by myself, Logan Campbell. Sean Fredericks, Bison Hall of Famer, will be sitting in for Kyle Emanuel this week. He'll join me as well on the broadcast. Jeff will be there as well. Our Bison kickoff show at 2:20, and then NDSU and North Carolina A&T at about 2:30. For Jeff Kolpack, I'm Dom Izzo. That's the latest edition of the Kolpack and Izzo podcast, brought to you by Gate City Bank.